finally doing this. Hi, I'm Dani Sprinkle, and this is the Salty Sprinkle. I'm doing this cooking show because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who feel like, oh, I just can't make that, or I don't have the right ingredients, or there's no way I could put that together. I'm a lousy cook. No, anybody can make these recipes. These are simple recipes that I've been making my whole life. I've been making them with my mom since I can remember, and I just want to share them with you. So today, the first thing I want to make with you is my lasagna recipe. Actually, in my mind, I call it Aunt Marilyn's lasagna. It's a recipe that my mom got from my Aunt Marilyn years and years ago, and I've made some tweaks to it, but it's a family favorite, and it's been a friend favorite as well. So the recipe is, we're going to, first we've got, here are the ingredients that we'll be using. We got mozzarella cheese, cottage cheese, eggs, whole canned tomatoes, tomato paste. This is a 12-ounce can of tomato paste. It's like the equivalent of 2 of those little small cans of tomato paste that you see at the grocery store. Basil, salt, grated Parmesan cheese. Yep, just the basic, cheap, grated Parmesan cheese. Parsley, Italian sausage, just generic Italian sausage that I had in my freezer. So I always like to keep it in my freezer just in case I want to make some lasagna. So the first thing I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to start my water. So I've got a pot of water here that I'm going to turn on. Just turn on high, and I'm going to add a little salt to it. And this is going to be where I cook my lasagna noodles. So on a gas stove, when you're heating up a pot of water, it can take a while. So this is like the first thing I get started. Now, while that's heating up, I'm going to start on the sauce. And the first thing you want to do with the sauce is you take your 1 pound of Italian sausage. I prefer sweet Italian sausage or just regular Italian sausage. Some people like their Italian sausage hotter, which is fine, but if you do that, just keep in mind that it makes your entire lasagna spicy. So I would recommend going with a milder sausage. And some of you, hey, we've got a pandemic going on, and some kinds of meats are harder to find in the grocery store. And you may be saying, hey, I've got all of these ingredients in my pantry right now, or in my kitchen, but I don't have sausage. You know what? That's fine. If you have a pound of ground beef, what you will want to do is you'll brown your ground beef, and instead of 1 teaspoon of basil to put in the sauce, you'll put a tablespoon of basil in the sauce, and then you'll just need to add like about a 1/4 teaspoon salt. So that's a little trick for you. Dealing with, not dealing with, but just using what you have in your kitchen. So to me, that's one thing that's really important. I really believe it is nice when you have good ingredients. That's great. But honestly, when I'm making lasagna, these are just basic ingredients. As you can see, I have a lot of store brands, Kroger brand. Honestly, the Kroger brand cottage cheese is my favorite. But I do like it with the milk fat. I like the small curd, and I like full milk fat. So if you're cooking with me, we're going full fat. So just a heads up there. All right, so what I'm going to do now is brown my sausage, and this can take a little bit of time. So what I'm going to do is, with the sausage, I'm making sure I'm getting chunks of it, getting it brown, broken up into chunks, so you don't end up with one big sausage patty that you're cooking. So I'm just going to take your cooking utensil and do this. You could use a regular spoon, or you could use a spatula if you want. This is just a tool that I loved when I was a kid. My mom had a similar tool, and this is just something I'm used to cooking with. So it's just like a flat bamboo cooking tool. So it's great for making sure you get like what I'm doing right now, or if you're making sausage, it's really nice to be able to, scrape the bottom of your pan, things like that. So anyway, sausage here. And when you're browning sausage, right now I have it up a little too high. You want to keep it about a medium heat. And you don't want it to cook too fast because you don't want it to get way brown on the outside and then be raw on the inside. When you're cooking sausage, you want to cook it thoroughly. We are going to bake this lasagna as well. So, but we do pre-cook everything that goes in there essentially. Almost everything. And another thing that we're going to make sure we do at the very beginning that I forgot to do is we're going to want to preheat our oven to 375 degrees. So we're going to, with the recipe, it calls to simmer the sauce for 30 minutes. We don't need to preheat the oven quite yet, but I don't want to forget to do that in a little bit. So our meat is just about brown. What I'm going to do next is, with the meat, I'm going to drain like most of the grease off, because when you're cooking with Italian sausage, there's usually some fat. What I'm going to do, just going to move this up, drain this off. We do some fat in there. We're not like rinsing off the meat or anything, but so our meat is nice and brown. I am going to take my can of whole tomatoes. This is 14.5 ounces of whole tomatoes, my 12-ounce can of tomato paste. I've got my basil here. So these are the three additional ingredients that go into the sauce. Super simple. I'm going to carefully add in my can of whole tomatoes. Look at that. Sometimes you see little peels on them. Just take it off, throw it away. And then I'm going to take my can of tomato paste, my trusty little mini spatula here. Put that in there. If you don't have a handy little tool like that, that's fine. Just you can use a spoon, whatever you got. You just want to make sure you get out as much of that tomato paste as possible. And then and now I'm going to take our basil. And remember, like I said earlier, if you're doing this with hamburger, you'll want to use a tablespoon of basil. But we're using Italian sausage, so we just want a teaspoon of basil. So that's the littler guy here. So just take a tablespoon, just sprinkle it around. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is very carefully chop up these whole tomatoes using my tool here. And you may be asking, well, Dani, why don't you just use diced tomatoes if you're mashing up these whole tomatoes anywhere? You know what? I think about that sometimes. I wonder why I don't use diced tomatoes, but I just grew up doing the whole tomatoes and I really like it. And I'll tell you the truth, it's harder and harder for me to find the whole tomatoes. So if all you've got is diced tomatoes, give it a shot. I would do it if that's all I had, but like I said, it's like, you know, sometimes you just go, when you grow up making a recipe, you just kind of go with that. So I'm just being straight with you. That's what I'm doing. I'm using the whole tomatoes because that's the recipe, and you got to be careful because they squirt all over when you're, they can squirt all over when you're chopping them up in the pan. So just be gentle when you're mashing them up. You're just making sure that you've got all of your tomatoes broken up, chopped up. Making sure all the sausage is all incorporated. So the pan I'm using is a 10-inch, and it's a saute pan. You could also use like a skillet. That's fine. For a long time I used a skillet, but this is probably my favorite pan that I use. It's a 10-inch nonstick scan pan. If you ever have a chance to find a scan pan on sale, check it out. Here you go. So as you can see, the sauce, everybody's all incorporated. Basil's in there, tomato paste, whole tomatoes. Now what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna kind of flatten it all out. I don't know why I do this, because it looks pretty and I'm a little bit OCD about this stuff. So I'm doing this. And then we're gonna simmer this for 30 minutes on the stove here. So I'm gonna turn this down to low, or if you don't have a low setting, like number 1 or number 2 on your stove. And then I'm gonna put my timer on for 30 minutes. So I'm gonna do 30 minutes. You can do it on your kitchen timer, on your phone, whatever. So there we go. And I'm gonna keep an eye on this, and I'll come back and stir it occasionally. But while this is doing its thing, I'm going to make our filling. So our filling I've got a medium-sized glass bowl here. Filling includes cottage cheese, 2 eggs. See, I'm reading my recipe. A ½ cup of grated Parmesan and pepper. My Aunt Marilyn's recipe calls for salt too. But I usually leave the salt out because I find that it gets really, really salty because these ingredients like cottage cheese and Parmesan cheese, they have a lot of salt in them already. So, I mean, if you like things a little on the saltier side, you can put some salt in, but otherwise this is a pretty good salt level. Also included in the filling, the additional filling is parsley flakes. So, what I'm gonna do now, so this is small curd, 4% milk fat cottage cheese. This is 24 ounces, which is 3 cups. You can also use ricotta cheese. Some people swear by ricotta cheese or ricotta cheese, as Giada would say. But I am not a ricotta cheese fan. I prefer the cottage cheese. It's easy to find. It's inexpensive. And I think it just tastes delicious. So that's why I am a cottage cheese girl. If you prefer ricotta cheese, that's awesome. You can make it with ricotta cheese as well, but I always make it with cottage cheese, and people still really love this lasagna. So just go ahead, dump this in here, grab another one of my little mini spatulas, and get all this goodness out. A lot of times cooking, I mean, we're doing a cooking show today, but a lot of times cooking, when you're just cooking at home, it's about time management, especially if you're going to have people over or something, you want to just make sure you're timing things correctly. So the reason I start my noodles first and then go to my sauce is just in terms of time management, because then when everything's done, all the components are done about the same time, it just makes it easier so you can put together, get it in the oven, and it just helps keep moving the process along. So I'm taking 2 eggs, putting them in a bowl. So I'm going to take a fork. And just whisk these up a little bit. And the reason we do this is it just breaks them up. It just breaks them down and makes them more consistent, rather than having to trying to mix in the yolk and the white and make sure it's all mixed in there. You just kind of pre-mix the egg is essentially what you're doing, so it's easier to incorporate into your filling. So stick that in there. just Parmesan cheese. So we're doing a half cup of this. We want, how much? 2 tablespoons of parsley flakes. And when you're cooking, when you're doing savory stuff like this, I mean, you want to be close. But like when it comes to like parsley flakes, it's okay if you have a little more or a little less. This is more just of a seasoning to just make your filling a little bit more interesting. So we'll mix this up, and then it takes calls for a half teaspoon of pepper. So we're gonna grind some pepper. And if you already have pre-ground black pepper, just use your measuring spoons. Otherwise, I like fresh ground black pepper, so I'm just using this. And what I'm gonna do for a half teaspoon is just kind of make sure, just keep grinding it until it like kind of just lightly covers the surface area of my mix here. All right, I'm gonna mix this all together. Make sure it's all incorporated. There we go. See? And I'm going to start boiling our lasagna noodles. So this is a 1 pound box of lasagna noodles. Use what you got and what you can find right now. So what I do is I put them in. I put them in one at a time. And as you can see, I'm putting them in kind of like a fan. And I count my noodles as I put them in, because when we construct the lasagna, I want to put half on the bottom and half on the top. So right now we're at 4. And there are 20 noodles in this box. All right, so I'm going to grab a spoon and I'm going to stir my lasagna noodles around. I want to make sure they're all in the water and not sticking together or sticking to the bottom of the pan. And for cooking lasagna noodles, you do need a big deep pot like this. So if you don't have a pot like this, it'd be something you'd want to invest in. You can get like 6 or 8 quart cooking pots. You can find them at even Home Goods or TJ Maxx or any a lot of discount stores, like in their cooking sections, you can find, pots like this, and they're like maybe $10 or something. So it's a great investment. Make sure everybody's all the way in the pool, boiling away, and we're gonna cook these for about 10 to 15 minutes. I like my lasagna noodles on the softer side. Some people like them al dente, which is great, but I usually cook mine so they're on the softer side. We'll turn this down a little bit. We want to keep it boiling, but we don't want to just splooge all over the stove. All right, let's give our sauce a stir here. Everything's looking good. And then we're gonna want to grate our cheese. So with the cheese, I already have I pre-grated mine. When it comes to mozzarella cheese, I prefer to get a block of cheese and grate it. We have a pound of mozzarella cheese total, so that's 2 of the little 8-ounce bricks, or you can get a 16-ounce brick. So, and that's my preference, but I've made it using the cheese, that you buy in the bags, and I know it's so much easier. But this is just a preference of mine that I go with. And you do whatever works best for you, but if you've got the time, I'd give this a try. Right now, I'm getting ready to take the lasagna noodles off. So as you could see, they were at a soft rolling boil. Lasagna noodles, it's kind of hard to figure out when they're done, I'll be honest, because you can't just, with spaghetti, you just take one out and some people throw it against the wall, or you just try it and see if it's at the consistency you want. But lasagna noodles, it's kind of harder to do that. So what I just make sure, I just stir them up and make sure they're really nice and limp, and look at that. So these noodles are just at where I want them to be. I'm gonna take this since it's metal handles, got my oven mitts here, safety first. I'm gonna take my lasagna noodles and I'm gonna take cold water and I'm gonna rinse each of these guys off individually. I'm gonna rinse out my pan, rinse this out. Got my pot here, cool it down. This is what I do, I'm gonna rinse off each individual noodle. Just wanna make sure I get these rinsed off quickly and individually so they don't stick together. Okay, so our sauce is just done. So we're gonna turn off my timer here. As you can see, this sauce is really thick and pasty. That's what it's supposed to look like. If your sauce looks like this, you've done a great job. So now I'm gonna take my 9x13 pan. Doesn't need to be greased, it's just your dry 9x13 pan. And I'm gonna bring this sauce right over here, put it on my trivet, and we're gonna construct this lasagna. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take the lasagna noodles and I'm gonna lay them down. Just make sure that you layer them, you want them to overlap. If you gotta like choose where your noodles go, if they're looking a little rough, use the solid noodles as much as possible on the bottom layer. So 10, all right. So we've got our 10 lasagna noodles on the bottom. And the next thing we do is we take our ricotta filling. So we're gonna take about half, or not a ricotta, a cottage cheese filling. And we're gonna take about half of it and spread it along the bottom here. So just do this. So we used half of our cottage cheese filling here, as you can see. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take, this is 8 ounces of cheese. This is like one small brick of cheese that I grated up. And I'm gonna put it all over the top of here. And make sure we cover all of that cottage cheese mixture. Because our sauce, our red sauce, is gonna go on top of this. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just make a little divider line right in between my pan. This whole video is leading up to putting the sauce on the lasagna. Because as you can see, this sauce is really dense. And if you don't put it on just a particular way, you can end up not having enough sauce for your lasagna. So what I do is you take a teaspoon and you plop it in the corner. Start by popping it in the corner and then you spread it out. You take the sauce and you gently spread it. Because I'm only going to use half of what's in this pan to cover this whole layer. So I've known people who've taken my mom's lasagna recipe and they make it and they're like, I had to make a whole nother batch of sauce because they didn't know this trick. So this is the teaspoon trick I'm showing you. This makes all the difference in the world when making this lasagna. So earlier I mentioned that we need to preheat our oven to 375, so I'm going to do that right now. Our oven preheats pretty quickly, so you know how quickly your oven preheats, so just make sure you give enough time. So what we're going to do now is do another layer of noodles. So I'm going to check the bottom of my pan. Okay. So when you look at the bottom of your glass pan, you're going to see one solid noodle. One whole noodle, and you see all these others stacked on it. You want to take the end with the solid noodle. You want that towards you. And you're going to start at the other end, because where the solid noodle was, that's where you started the last time. So you want to start you want to put your next layer of noodles, you want to start them on the opposite side, just to kind of even out. So here we go. Now we have this guy had a rough time in the pot. So you can either put it aside or else you can just like lay it on top of another noodle. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put him aside still. We'll just stick this guy right down there because another noodle will go right on top of him. There we go. This is easy because we aren't trying to conserve for the next layer. Here we're just gonna put all the rest of what we have on this last layer of lasagna. Now I'm gonna take my cheese, and again, you're just gonna make sure that all the cottage cheese mixture is covered. As you can see now, we've got meat, we've got sauce pretty much everywhere, so I'm just going through with the rest of the sauce and just making sure that I cover everything up. And any places that look like they could use a little more sauce or some sausage chunks. Make sure everybody gets a little love. All right, so I'm gonna take this lasagna and I'm going to put it in the oven, in the middle rack, in the middle of the oven. We're going to have it in here for about half an hour. Set my timer for 30 minutes and go. And while that's baking, I'll clean this up and we'll be back in a little bit. All right, so the timer went off, so I'm gonna take this out of the oven. Look at that. It has that warm, gooey cheese smell and a hint of basil, and there's that warm tomato goodness. So we're gonna let this sit for about 5 or 10 minutes just to let it settle and cool off just a minute, and then we'll give it a try. Look at that. Look at that melty goodness. I taste the Parmesan. The noodles are nice and dense. Get that tang from the Italian sausage. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you love this lasagna as much as I do. More than that, I hope it encourages you to get in the kitchen and just give it a try. Next week, I will share with you why I came up with the name The Salty Sprinkle as we make chocolate chip cookies. Yeah, they're delicious. So, in the meantime, have a great week and keep cooking.